House is an incredibly fun film that turns into a feverish nightmare. It's based on the director's daughter's childhood fears, a collage of her terrors. A group of young girls who each have their own individuality are taken one by a haunted house. But the house shows the girls their fate. Initially, they are introduced in a happy-go-lucky anime-style intro. Now, I want to give some context for the story. The film starts by looking extremely inviting. The sets are bright and colorful, especially the kaleidoscope cloud-filled skies that radiate warmth, filled like a painterly coming-of-age comedy, but it wants you to feel this way, building the innocence of the girls. They are finally unshackled from school as their summer vacation is approaching. Gorgeous and Fantasy run into their teacher who had just gotten engaged. They pry at the teacher, asking her if she's marrying for love, but the teacher doesn't respond, holding a nervous smirk before telling the girls that it's an arranged marriage, implying that she's not happy with their situation. But this remark flies over the girls' heads. As the girls walk away, she reminisces about being young. Gorgeous comes home to meet her dad, who just returned from a trip, to find out that he's marrying a woman that she had never met. Ryuko instantly tries to be very complimentary towards Gorgeous, but she's scared Ryuko will get between her and her father. Since her mother had been gone, she had taken a lot of responsibilities to keep her dad together. She mended his clothing, helped with the cooking, she learned to be independent, while her father learned to be dependent upon her. But now that there's someone else in the picture, who he chose to join their lives, she feels like she isn't good enough for her father, that he has a hole that he has to fill with another woman. In these two instances, it builds that the other girls still have a positive perception of marriage, but Gorgeous now feels the effect that marriage will have on her own family dynamic. She thought marriage was forever. Even though her mom had passed away, she hoped her dad would love no other woman. All of the girls develop a crush on their teacher, Mr. Togo. They are even more excited that they're going to a training camp during the summer that he's hosting. But as they're talking about him, Gorgeous appears in the background looking visibly uncomfortable. When she walks up to her friends, they bring up how amazing her dad is, which she disagrees with after hearing the news from the night before. Mr. Togo disappoints the girls that he can't run the training camp. They're all dispirited except for Gorgeous. She invites the girls to join her at her aunt's house where her mother grew up, as she's looking for any way to connect with her mother in her absence. So she turns to her aunt, who she'd met only once before. Her friends are ecstatic that they'll have something to do during the summer. Ryoko realizes that Gorgeous is taking this trip so she can get away from her and her father, so she decides it will be her responsibility to pick up her and her friends so that they can bond together. Gorgeous tells her friends about her aunt, that she was planning on marrying her fiancé before he was drafted into World War II, but he never returned. So her aunt was robbed of her love, never given the opportunity to live out her life with him. But she continued waiting for him, hoping that he'd show up on her doorstep. She watched as Gorgeous's mom got married, but never found anyone for herself, so she lives alone, isolated in her countryside mansion. When they arrive in the town, they find a creepy man running a watermelon stand. He looks excited that the girls have shown up. Relating how Gorgeous looks like her aunt, as the girls walk away, he states, They find themselves at the door of the mansion, amazed by its size. Then her aunt appears in the doorway in a wheelchair holding a cat. Fantasy attempts to take a picture of them with her aunt, but the cat's eyes glow and the camera falls out of her hands, falling to the ground and breaking on the cement. As they walk into the home, the aunt turns on a chandelier. It starts glowing and a harrowing ring sounds. The spiky crystals start dropping on the girls, but Kung Fu saves them by kicking the crystals as they fly across the room. The house is huge, but it's horribly kept. Large spiderwebs can be seen strung across the rooms. The aunt brings up that the town used to be prosperous. All the girls from the town used to come to her for piano lessons, but no one lives in the town anymore, so she doesn't teach any longer. The girls realize that Gorgeous's aunt can't do much work as she's confined to a wheelchair, so they decide to divide and conquer to get the house in order. Now, with all this context, I want to talk about each of the characters and their importance in the film. It can be seen that marriage is a large theme, but it truly hasn't affected the lives of the girls except for Gorgeous. They're innocent, untouched by the hardships of life, but they are coming of age, so the shadow of marriage is starting to encroach upon them. But each of the girls have their own individuality. Melody is a talented musician, Prof is incredibly book smart, Fantasy is imaginative, Sweet's incredibly kind and innocent, Kung Fu is courageous and trained in martial arts, Mac loves to eat, and Gorgeous is pretty. But the aunt they're visiting is a vengeful spirit that takes away from the girls the same as marriage. From her jealousy, she grew a hatred for youth, ridding the town of young people, then turning on the girls when they decide to visit. Each of the girls is unique, so marriage would affect each of them in different ways, removing their individuality. The girls are sent to a place they've never been before, helpless against the will of their aunt. In the same way the girls are at the behest of society, living in a patriarchy, their ability to find a relationship and what relationship they land up in is not in their control. I'm going to cover each of the girls and the connection between their fate in the home and the future of her relationship. Mac has an insatiable appetite, which she gets teased for, but when it's her friends making the jokes, it's purely for fun. But when the aunt makes fun of her, it's truly mean. As the girls come into town, Mac bought a large watermelon and lugs it all the way to the mansion. Once they arrive, the aunt wants to keep it cool by leaving it in the water well, so Mac decides to go alone to the well, but she doesn't come back. Sweet worries about her and decides to go look for her, but when she gets to the well, no one is there. I just want to have to interject and say that this is one of the most beautiful frames in the film. Though something awful is about to happen, the scene radiates warmth. The clouds are gradient with rolling reds, oranges, and yellows flying across the sky, but the well is dark and the plants surrounding it are muted, lying in the shadow of this beautiful home. Sweet decides to pull the rope up to see if Mac tied the watermelon to it, but she realizes that it's her head. But her head is possessed. Still hungry, she tries to take a bite of Sweet before falling back into the well. She met her end possessed to eat, in the same way that her appetite consumed her while she was living, that she would have trouble finding a husband because of her habits, that she was destined to never find the spark of love that the aunt felt. The aunt sees this in her. She feels envious of Mac, that she is the gift of youth, but she sees her eating as wasting this, so she decides to eat Mac's body, leaving her head attached to the well. Sweet is extremely kind. She doesn't possess a mean bone in her body. When she sees a problem, she generously offers support. So when she saw the state of the mansion, she wanted to help Gorgeous's aunt clean her place. But the kindness she exudes is used against her, as she can't say no to somebody that needs her help. But as she's cleaning, she runs into a storage room. She sees a doll propped up across the space. As she walks towards it, the cat comes into the room. They reiterate over and over that a cat can open a door, but only a witch can close one. The cat closes the door and its eyes glow. The room turns hectic, feathers fly, mattresses and pillows fall, suffocating her. In the same way that once she's married, she's destined to a life of servitude, that she won't have the ability to have her own autonomy, married to be the housemaid for her husband as she won't say no. She won't stand up for herself and she puts all others before herself. They later find her body in a grandfather clock. Thick oozing blood starts running down the clock's face, until all she becomes is a big pool of red goo, that her youthfulness will fade with time, that her innocence is bound by time. Melody is extremely determined, which leads her to be extremely talented at playing the piano. She's praised by her friends for her abilities, that she could take her talents and apply them to a career, being able to share her music with the world. But Melody meets her end facing her passion. While playing the evening mist on the piano, the cat appears and its eyes shine. The piano keys start lighting up, but Melody doesn't react. But she feels the piano bit her. Once the other girls leave to check on Sweet, she acts odd, as if she had become possessed. She gets asked to play the piano again later and she decides to reluctantly. She sits down and starts playing, but she can't stop. The keys start lighting up and the failboard goes erratic. The piano takes her fingers and eventually her hands, before eating her whole. That if she was married, she would have to throw her ambitions to the side. The piano took away her ability to play, just as a marriage contract would force her to change her priorities. Kung Fu is courageous, athletic, and heroic, willing to throw herself at any problem in order to save her friends. She saves them from the chandelier, she chops the firewood and kicks down the possessed flaming sticks that attack her. When the phone becomes animated, she roundhouse kicks the box to save herself. She attempts to break down the walls when they were locked shut, and she fights the vengeful spirit when it shows itself in the end. But while she is trying to save her friend, she gets a lamp dropped on her. Her head is taken from her body, as she fought back against her fate but got shut down because she was powerless in the situation. It's her sense of independence that she fights her own battles, unafraid to fight even when it's clearly not in her control. She isn't submissive in the way that a society that's built around arranged marriage would value. Seeing this quality in her, the spirit takes out her aggression on Kung Fu. Though her body was chopped up, her legs still managed to kill the cat tormenting them. Prof is book smart and a critical thinker. She was calm through most of her stay as she believed there was logical reason for everything happening around them. She is the level-headed friend that keeps them all together, but she's shaken by the spirit. But she was still able to put together that Gorgeous had been taken over by the spirit by not seeing her reflection in the mirror. After Kung Fu killed the cat, its blood started to fill the room. Luckily, Prof and Fantasy are floating on a plank of wood, but her glasses get knocked off her face, leading her to put her hand in the water to try to find them. But the spirit pulls the girl down into the water, never to be seen again. That once she's been approached for marriage, her intellect isn't an aspect that is cherished, that the spirit in the same way is stripping her of her individuality, that without her eyesight her intellect is taken from her, which she searched for but only found her end. Fantasy lives in a dream world, fantasizing about what her life could be, but only seeing her future with pure enthusiasm. She locks onto her teacher, Mr. Togo, wishing she could be with him, but she only sees him for his positive traits, that he's manly and handsome. He promised that he would pick them up, so Fantasy hoped that Togo would be her Prince Charming and save them from their end. As the story plays out, we get to watch Togo on his journey. He was in no rush, stopping at the ramen shop and stopping at the watermelon stand to have a pointless argument. While Fantasy placed all these positive attributes on Mr. Togo in her dreams, they weren't real. In the same way she placed her trust in Mr. Togo, it's how she found her end, trusting in the spirit, hoping it was truly gorgeous, falling into her arms helplessly. But she isn't seen at the end of the film, so it's implied that the spirit ate her too, that her hopefulness comes from her ignorance of being young, that her dream life will be shattered, hoping a Prince Charming will take her away, but the reality of an arranged marriage has little to do with love. Gorgeous through all of this just wanted to find a way to connect with her mother. Now that she is faced with her father's remarriage, she is afraid that her mother's memory will be forgotten, that she doesn't live in her father's heart any longer, so going to see her aunt was a shot in the dark to find any way to reminisce about her. Gorgeous had the largest problems as her aunt's spirit clung to her. Seeing how her aunt's envy was initially built from seeing her mother married, she took out the same jealousy on Gorgeous. Since it was noticed that Gorgeous could not be seen in the mirror, it would seem that she was killed when looking into her aunt's vanity. It's not only the connection to her mother that made her choose Gorgeous, it's that she's beautiful, so she's the essence of youth, but she doesn't have individuality in the same way that the others do. She is the only person named based off a physical trait rather than a personality trait. She's the epitome of a perfect wife in a patriarchal society. In the end, the spirit inhabiting Gorgeous's body meets with Ryoko, but she's confused why none of her friends are there. But before Ryoko can figure out, the man sets her on fire, that she was going to get married to Gorgeous's dad, but it hadn't happened yet, so she devoured the unmarried woman. So the story is pretty grim by the time you get to the end, which is a disconnect from the beautiful colors and the playful attitude it gives off. It almost masks this reality, making you focus on its absurd and surreal imagery, rather than the harsh predicament of the girls. House is an absolutely amazing film. It's something that you can truly call unique in that I don't think there's anything out there like it. You could almost enjoy the movie without the subtitles on, only watching the visuals, but the film has a lot to say, so I don't recommend that. If you've only seen the film once or twice, I recommend revisiting it. The first time I watched it a couple years ago, I fell in love with it, but I was so infatuated with the aura of the film that I don't think I grasped the connection to marriage. But I hope you enjoyed listening to this as much as I enjoyed making it. Thanks for watching, and throw a like on there and subscribe if you please. Have a good one.